Oh, thank you so much, Charles and Leah, both of you, for inviting me. They run a very generous program here, open up their private home, which is unnerving for anyone. But I've been here a couple of times before, and the whole house is open, including their wardrobes. You know, so they run a. Yeah, I did. So very generous that they do this program to help people understand architecture and art. Yes, and so a couple of other things, and thank you for the generous introduction. I'm not doing grand designs anymore. I'm concentrating on my practice, and I do a few of those non-for-profits. And the work that we've been doing over the last 35 years is a team effort in my office. I'm not the only author. It takes a good team to make good architecture, and architects need multi-skills. And I have skills, and other people in my office have other skills. And building a team that can create work is critical. Like most things in life, you can't do everything. You rely on partners and colleagues. About 2 or 3 months ago, Charlie said, would I like to do this talk? And I said, great. We brainstormed on what the topic might be, knowing that there's an exhibition that sort of is trying to make connections with abstract art that's bigger than itself. So we had the idea to pose this question: what makes architecture? And just reading that, even without a question mark at the end of it, makes me shake in my boots, because it's a bloody hard question to answer. And I don't think there's a definitive answer on this. So I'd like you all to engage in this and help me start off by answering this question without a question mark. What makes architecture? Would anyone like to have a stab at what that might be? A word, you'll do. Well, it's like an auction. Oh, well, start with no, I'll take a sentence after that. People makes architecture. Good.
Well, design.
Design.
Space.
What was that one?
Space.
Space.
Sustainability.
Sustainability is a part of it.
Emotional response.
Emotional response. That's a different thought altogether from the other suggestions.
Functionality.
Functionality is important.
Materials.
Materials, correct.
Buildings.
Buildings are the outcome. Yes, what was that?
Space.
Space.
Faith.
Faith. That's a good one. Religion. Religion. Sorry, someone up there? Did I hear a word back there? No?
Creativity.
Creativity, yep, yep.
When the structure evokes a feeling of beauty in the observer.
Very important part of the formula that makes architecture. I mean, I think we could go on, couldn't we? Because it's kind of an endless question. Here's some of the answers. Certainly not all of them. And what I'm interested in is this idea that artists work from real to the observed, to the abstract, and artists work from the real to the abstract. Architects work from abstract to the real. It's kind of a reversal. And I think that's a really lovely notion of how we work in the same realm but differently. Now that's a quote from an American architect that I thought was quite succinct. And I did a bit of research trying to work out how to answer this question. And so I thought we'd start from a really basic idea of what makes architecture, and start with this thing. It's just a lump of clay, isn't it? And it's two-dimensional. What else is it? It's upside down, isn't it? So if I take one of these things, and here's one here. It's a lump of clay, inert lump of clay. 76 by 110 by 230 dimensions, made to be uplifted by hand. So a single person can construct something. It has a bed course and a perpend, which is the vertical joint, and arrises all the way around. And this lump of clay is familiar to all of us. And we would just pass by it if we saw it in the street, wouldn't we? And not think much about it, other than perhaps the cost. Anything from $2 to $8, depending on the one you select. But this particular brick is a bit different from most bricks. It has this on the inside of it. And this is the frog. And this says, Glen Iris and the Olympic rings in 1956. So suddenly this brick goes from an inert lump of clay to something far more important. It marks time, it marks an event, it marks where it's from, and also the date evokes a sense of memory for us all, both the Olympics and what we were doing at that time. So this brick we salvaged. I salvaged a number of them from a project we were doing about 10 years ago, because it was more than just a brick. This is a project that my design partner Drew Carling and I worked on in Queensbury Street, and that's Drew here in the khaki shirt trying to hide back there, in Queensbury Street, North Melbourne. And we were given this site to work on, a heritage building at the front, but at the back there was about a 7 to 8 storey building which was the RMIT School of Printing and Graphics. And our client wanted to loosen up this back of the site to enable this building to be fully utilised. So the project started with the demolition of this building, to the great joy of all these terrace houses that were opposite. Suddenly they got all the north sun in and outlook. But this building was constructed of these bricks and looked something like the front of the heritage building was at the front, and you can see this building at the back with the scaffold on it coming down. And so during the demolition, we did a number of site visits assessing the heritage building, but one day noticed that there's some bricks lying on the ground with that mark embedded in the frog of the brick. So from that sort of emotional response to that brick and this building that's coming down, we had a kind of a different view to the heritage building at the front. And so the way we made the architecture for this restoration, renovation, addition, rejuvenation of this old heritage building, it took a kind of a turn based on bricks. And so Henry Bastow was the architect of the original building. Henry he was the government architect. He was appointed to the education department to run the education revolution. They built 600 buildings in about 5 years, I think it was, Drew, wasn't it? Some extraordinary number of buildings. And he was the head running all the design work. There's his drawings. There's all the buildings that were done in 5 years. And they all looked very much like this building. So Henry was a great pirate. He liked getting bits and pieces from previous styles, mostly Gothic revival. And he would sprinkle these annotations over the buildings that he did around. There's a number of them at our heritage listed now, including this what we call the Bastow Institute in North Melbourne, Queensbury Street, North Melbourne. But what we found interesting with Henry's work, was the use of his brickwork, which had these diagonal patterns through it. And he was playing with the idea that bricks can be more than just an inert object. They can convey a sense of movement, a sense of patination, and a connection to another style back that he was interested in, which is kind of a Gothic revival style. So when we came up with our plan for this building, we had the fairly orthogonal, straightforward heritage building at the front, but then had the idea to build on an extension which was quite a different kind of language to the front building that responded to perhaps the patination in the front part of the building, but it was reinterpreted in a different way. And we wanted to, this is an education building. The education that went on in 1888 at the front part of the building was very rigid and stiff. We had a teacher at the front, kids lined up in bleachers, tearing up with bad air, and kids with snotty noses, and we thought there was another way to educate people around a more dynamic building, and so the addition took that kind of form over three levels: basement, ground level, and first floor. And you can see the architecture is quite the opposite to the heritage architecture. But what was interesting also was not just the bricks, but also the way you gave the building more meaning through layering. And so we had branding consultants, Emery in fact, came up with the idea of birds in flight, which is about leadership, which is what this building was about, leadership in education. And from that kind of idea grew sort of a graphic annotation, patination, which we could then a layer over the building, both perforations in the outside building and also on the inside face with acoustic treatments to further give that sense of meaning and understanding about what the building, the new use of the building might be. Henry Bastow, it's him here. We made him out of clay, and he's now a bronze sculpture. He wasn't that tall, but apparently Peter Corlett, who was the sculptor, said that statues have to be larger than life to give them gravitas, and so we went along with that. But we launched the project, and Henry Bastow's family, descendants, all came along to the opening, and John Bastow's an architect, as is Polly, and we had this sculpture made to again reinforce the meaning of this building, which is kind of interesting, going from a lump of clay, you know, the way the materiality of a building can be interpreted and extrapolated, if you like. And so thinking about what I was going to do tonight, I couldn't help but think about the past, not just about the present. And it made me wonder and do a bit of research about people that have tried to interpret what makes architecture from the beginning, like right back in time. And I think anyone who makes a building has to answer a certain brief: budget, time, you know, functionality. But right back in the antiquities, there were architects trying to come up with a building with meaning, and this architect Phidias, I'm not Greek, I'm not sure if I got the pronunciation correct. Someone might help me. Phidias. Thank you, Phidias. 447 BC, had an idea to do a building on a rocky outcrop that represented the best architecture of the time. So it was, Doric columns with, what he thought was perfect proportions, with an inner and an outer layer of columns, made out of the best stone of the time, and what they thought was the most elegant building to the gods. And so, the columns are all, as you might know, are all curved coming down. So it gives when you stand at the base, they don't come in, they go visually, they look dead straight. So they did kind of mathematical and proportional studies to make this building look as elegant as it possibly could. So they were grappling with, do a temple to the gods, what's it going to be? And so they were going back to earlier Greek attempts at building the best building, the building of the most meaning the gods would be happy with, using the most appropriate building material of the time that was available, stone. And so, about a few hundred years later, this guy comes along. Vitruvius was a deep thinker, and he wrote 10 books on planning and architecture, and it's Treatise on de Architectura. And it was used for about 1,500 years, his treatise on architecture. It was considered the bee's knees on how to go about putting buildings together. What makes good architecture? I've got it down pat. And some of the suggestions on what makes architecture today appears here, and I smile when I see these words, because Kevin McLeod, whenever he comes onto the stage, he likes to strut up the front in his firmitas, utilitas, and virtustas, and everyone goes, "Ooh, wow, wow!" But what is great about this guy Vitruvius is he's broken architecture down into 3 key elements, which is durability, structural integrity. So every building's got to stand up, right, through earthquakes. And through the period of time, it's got to be durable. Utility is the other issue, which is it's got to serve its purpose. If it's got to be a school, it's got to accommodate people. If it's going to be a place of worship, it's got to have a temple. But the other one, which I'm interested in, is venustas, which is it lifts the spirits and stimulates the senses, which is something which is less tangible, but just as important as the other elements. And it's with that kind of thought, I think, that element is the one that carries through time as we march forward to today, because the structural integrity has changed dramatically. We're not using stone, we're using steel and lightweight concrete, and so that the way we address structural integrity. And it's become a discipline in its own right. An architect used to have to do everything, including the structure. Today we have specialists to do all that, and the way structure work has changed dramatically with materials. And the fit for purpose, we want multi-use spaces these days. We want spaces that it's a lounge room one day and a bedroom the next. So, but I think the idea of venustas, which is something which lifts the spirits and stimulates, is consistent through time. He came up with this book, and this poor fella, who was very excited, Vitruvian Man, was a core idea in his proportional system. And so he tied the idea of architecture back to the human form, and a geometry came out of that. And I think that's very interesting that he made that connection. It's not something that's separate to human beings. It's very much part of our DNA and the way our body works. And this guy did it also, but this is 1,500 years later. So Leonardo da Vinci in 1500 wrote the 10 books of architecture. It's based on the 10 books of architecture. So he owned a copy of this, the 10 books of architecture by Ruskin, but he also went back to the Vitruvian Man. So he was looking at previous iterations of what the Vitruvian Man was, and he started to think, reinvent, although he's not quite as excited in this iteration. So Leonardo said, well, let's look at the work that's been done, and let's see what we can do with the human form. So he came up with this proportioning system that led to the golden mean, which is a mathematical formula around a proportion, and interestingly applied to Mona Lisa in 1503. And there's discussion around, and this is about deep thinkers trying to work out how architecture works with the human body and with mankind. And so it's not something that, it's an ongoing search for mankind to come up with the answer to this. So St Peter's Basilica, Leonardo worked on this building for 10 years, as did Michelangelo and Brunelleschi. But this was something that Leonardo did sketches for and tried to apply the work of Ruskin and the work of Vitruvius into St Peter's. Mind you, this went on for 400 years, and there's a lot of authors that have added to it, but it's just interesting that Leonardo had a hand in this. In 1849, now we're jumping 350 years forward, John Ruskin came up with the 7 lamps of architecture, with a way he could justify this new style called Gothic revival. And part of his study was around these. Oh, he's coming up too. It was around these things: sacrifice, truth, power, beauty, life, memory, and obedience. They're less tangible, less mathematical, less science-based, and more around human interaction, which I thought was really interesting. And so he's distinguishing between the idea of architecture and mere building. He's trying to separate those two thoughts. And he was the first architect to use photography to codify and record architecture, and particularly Venice. He went around and I think he wrote a book. It was the 7 lamps of, what was the Venice?
7 stones.
Who said it?
7 stones of Venice.
Thank you very much. Thank you. 7 stones of Venice. So here we are, 350 years later, and we're still trying to look for a rule book on how to create buildings. Now we're jumping forward another 100 years, about, to Edouard Juneret, Le Corbusier. And so he too was searching for the answer. How do we make architecture that has meaning? How do we make architecture that's got a code that I can refer to rather than have to invent the wheel every time? So when I was a young student, about 23 years of age, I jumped in a car, went to Europe for 3 months, slept in the car every night. It was a Cinquecento. So I was always with my knees tied up like this. I couldn't stretch out. And I had a little camp stove in the back. And I went to every Le Corbusier building I could go to. I worked for Peter Crone, architect at the time, and he was particularly knowledgeable on Le Corbusier. In fact, his work was very much an ode to Le Corbusier. And I found his work very interesting, and I'm still fascinated by his work today. He was a sculptor, he was an artist, he was an architect, he was a writer, very prolific man. He came up with the modular man. Now, the modular man is still based on the idea of the golden mean, and he came up with his own proportional system that related to the human form. And he applied that, and both in colour and in proportion to most of his buildings, which I think it gave him a rule book to work from, and I think it helped him be as prolific as he was. And so this is kind of an interpretation of his proportioning system. And so you can see the dimensions there, here 2743, there's centimetres, 70, which is a bench height, stand up, sit down, desk height, 140 leaning, 183. The only thing I would say with all these, they're all a little bit low because it's based on the French body. They are all a bit low. 43 is a bit low to sit on. 70 is about 72, 73. 86 about 90 to 93 centimetres. It's all a bit low. So he was using the French body as a kind of a measure. And so some of the buildings that I went to, which many of you may have also visited, was this one, Ronchamp, which is near the Swiss border, also known as Notre Dame de Haut, which means Our Lady of the Heights, which I just looked up today, what the meaning of that was. And I suddenly saw for the first time a lady in a dress with a hat on. For the first time, I've looked at this plan many, many times, and I suddenly looked at it differently with a woman on a side with a kind of a hat and a dress. But all these the patination and layout of the elements within this building, an amazing building, based on his modular system, modular proportioning system. So here we have someone, 1,500 years later, still trying to work out how to do things based on some sort of measure. How do I create this thing? And so you can't help but make an analogy, can you, between this building and what the women were, the nuns were wearing at the time. A sensational building. I also stayed at this place, which is La Tourette. It's a monastery. This was Le Corbusier's last work before he passed away, and so there's a lot of rigour in this building around his proportioning system. Has anyone else been to this building? Yeah. You can come and sit up the front. But I know, did you sleep there? I slept there, in one of the nuns' rooms, tiny room, and I couldn't get my knees under the desk, and I felt that the window was a bit low to look out of. But all the proportion of the windows, the heights of these slot windows, the patination of the dividers in these the vertical mullions, all around is modular, and inside you can see this vibration of columns, the colours that come off the modular man, and then he was fascinated with light, bringing light in through the building to illuminate the interior. So just another example of his work and how he was trying to codify kind of a solution. I don't need to say what that is. I did have a title on it, I took it off. So, just thinking about this building, and now we're jumping, right forward another, 50 years to this fellow here, who I don't know, have any of you read The House by Helen Pitt? It's a great book, great read, about the story of Utzon and how he was misused, treated very badly, and how he left the country and never came back. It's a great read. I really recommend it. But he came up with the idea of a very erudite building, but they had no mathematical formula to it. And he worked with Arup engineers, big engineering company in Sydney, and they were at loggerheads from day one because he wanted this highly, poetic building, and they wanted to codify it. They wanted to make it mathematical, and so Utzon wanted a free-form building, and this is his sketch very early on of perhaps what the form might be, and he just almost did like that styrograph thing you had as a kid. You make circles and cross it, and he's joined them together and made a form kind of similar to his competition entry, which was really loose. These are these entry drawings to the competition, and these are the ones that were on the floor as castaways when the jury was assessing the building, and they were not in the shortlist because they're obviously, how do you build something like that? Next. And so what happened, and some of you may know the story, I'm not going to ask you, you know the story already. So what happened was this architect came along late in the process during the judging. He was coming from America. And Iro had designed this building, which is JF Kennedy Airport, which I've been to, and he came into the adjudication process late. The drawings are on the floor, being discarded, and he said, "What's that over there?" They said, "Don't worry, we've already gone through the discarded ones." He said, "No, I'd like to look." He pulled it out, and he said, "This is a masterpiece." And the other judges said, "No, we're not building that." And he was quite, that's a St Louis arch he's standing in front of there, which some of you might have been to. But he was the highly regarded international judge. He wasn't a local councillor or politician. He was the expert architect, and so they listened to him. And fortunately for that we do have the. But just to go back to where Ewan was coming from, this is his wife Liz in a boat, and this is on the left-hand side the sailing ships that his father built and patented. And he had the licence to build that boat. I don't know how to pronounce it in, what would it be? Danish, thank you. I don't know how to pronounce that. But so his father, and so Ewan lived on the water, sailed all his life, saw all the boats being, and fell in love with kind of that experience. And, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't add that. Look at that. And so here we have an opera house today that you can only make an analogy to that. I don't know what sort of boat's that. Does anyone know the name of that boat?
Ask the guy.
Anyway, I think that that's where you would have to say the ideas come from. But to get to how do you make something like that? And the story has it that he peeled an orange, found out there's segments in the orange that when you cut in a certain way, you can make pieces that when assembled and so suddenly had a mathematical. So that went on for years. I think it took 14 years to do. I think to build this opera house, but it was about 3 or 4 years of trying to work out how do you do it. What's the mathematics behind these shells? Never been done before. And so here we have a working model. It was a timber model that was made after the orange idea that's been dissected and pieces taken out, which forms the basis of the opera house. So you could say an orange makes the opera house if you want to. So then coming a bit more forward, we have, now that shouldn't say John Ruskin, that should say Robin Boyd. So Robin Boyd came up with a book called, or many books, but he was very much about coming up with a new style of architecture that represented Australia today. This is his house in Walsh Street. And it's a fantastic house for those who have been there. It was a new way of thinking at the time and still very influential today. In fact, there's the Robin Boyd Foundation. Those of you who haven't been there, I'd suggest you go along, and it's open to the public, and it's still a very cutting-edge house today. So he was trying to think of a new architecture that represented Melbourne, Australia, that hadn't been done before. I think some people got onto it, and it had an influence, certainly in Caulfield and Beaumaris and Elstonwick, but the main body of houses we have today still don't have this clarity. But he was looking for inventing a new style that represented the way Australians live. Here we have a spoof, which Dave Medner does very well. In fact, Charles, you were just saying a moment ago, how's Adelaide? What did Barry say about Adelaide?
When they first formulated the Adelaide Festival, he sort of said, gee, the people in Adelaide are so clever, they get their culture over and done with in 2 weeks.
So here we have him in the Opera House, and Humphrey says a modern Australian way of life, stretched out and pinned down with knitting needles. The ghastly properties, the crazy clumsy genteelness of bungalow suburbia. So he was using the Opera House as an icon here to draw attention to the fact that this is a new building, but I think the bulk of suburbia is rubbish. And so the last building that Robin Boyd did is in South Yarra, and I find it, there's been a lot of controversy about this because he was right against featureism. He was trying to invent a new style that wasn't based on featureism. But this fishbowl restaurant, in 1970, created a stir because you could only say it looks very much like a fishbowl. So, you know, we've talked about what makes architecture in the past, right up to the recent past, but what makes architecture today? And because we have computers that work very fast, and because there's a lot more architects around today than there was, you know, 1,000 years ago, we have a plethora of people experimenting and coming up with a rich tapestry of architecture made of different materials that represents to them what architecture is. And so I'm going to start with this one, Fender Castellides. I personally think it's a great building. Before I even actually tried to read into it what it meant. It's a different form of building from anything else in the city, and it has markings on it, and it has kind of no clear geometry around the outside plan of the building. And for those of you that don't know, the idea was that it's based on the Eureka Stockade, and the top penthouse floors are all clad in gold leaf, referring to Eureka Stockade. And the red stripe is to do with the blood that was spilt over Eureka Stockade, which is here. And then the horizontal banding relating to the surveyor's staff, which again talks about not just Melbourne being divided up, but also I think the tenements that each of the prospectors had and had to give up as part of the rebellion around paying taxes to the government for their landholding to do their gold exploration. So, you know, I think that for me, buildings that have depth of meaning beyond the outside skin are really important. And I think they carry a lot more, going forward, they carry a lot more weight. In fact, I did a tour this last Saturday through Melbourne as part of Open House Melbourne, and the buildings that were the most interesting to the people on the tour that had a backstory about, not, oh, this isn't a great building because it's, you know, tall and it's, you know, it's cost a lot of money, but the small moments around the city that have resonance with your soul, let's say, carry the most weight and most memory with us. And so Maddison Architects were engaged to do the top few levels up here many years ago. So we were asked to do fit out in the top 2 levels and also the ground. So where do we start? So we liked the idea that the building was about vertigo and climbing to the top and experiencing the sensation of being up high. So the plan form we rotated and twisted. So there's this crumpling structure around the lift core, which is twisting and settling, and then the carpet radiates out a sort of vibration, and then the floor goes up and down as you walk around. So we got rid of the window sill, so it disappeared into the floor plate. And then we had a soundscape that went round with horses stampeding past and F1 cars zooming past. So it's all about accentuating the idea about being up so high. And so we added this to the upper level, which is a glass structure where the glass switches and becomes clear. So it's all about this experimentation with the senses. And then you can see the interior here twisting and buckling under the weight of the building. So we were searching for a kind of a language that related to the experience of being up here at this top level. There's just another shot of the, and then we have little spyglasses and lines cut into the carpet, reaching out to features in the landscape. So there's quite a lot of thought around, you know, how that could work, enhancing experience. This one here, Wardle Architects did this one not long ago, and I've given this example. I've got a couple of examples that I think are quite poignant about, you know, what makes architecture. And this is, I think, a great building, but it's to do with the hidden meaning. And I've been lucky enough to know John for a long time. I went to his house. When he was designing this, he just got a new piano. And I reckon, I said to John, I know what you're up to. This is very much like a piano lid lifting up and opening. Rubbish, this is rubbish. But I think that's part of it, and also the idea around, you know, sound coming out of the building, out of these little ports, these little viewing ports, like little trumpet exposures that you can see inside. And then you can see here there's these planes folding and opening. And then, of course, the idea that when you go up to this large porthole opening, which is here, you look into the interior, and there's this tension between being inside and outside, hearing the music inside and outside, and the idea around William Hogarth's The Enraged Musician about this conflict between, you know, what's going on in here is quite an anathema to what's happening outside. And I think that tension is part of the intrigue of the building. You can see it, you can't hear it. But also, I think the engagement that you have with this building is very clever. And that almost brings me to the end. How long have I been going? Oh, about on time. Is that right, Charlie? About 40 minutes? Thank you, Charlie. So, in thinking about this building, which is... my wife and I went down and visited this just recently, and I thought it was interesting to put up because I just scratched my head and I really struggled with this building because it's basically a box with a fiberglass sort of drape hanging around the outside, and you know, it's got tassels that are 3 metres high embedded in the facade. All this is glass reinforced concrete, and there's this layer giving the building another meaning beyond. To the public, to say, well, this is what this building is. It's about celebrating theatre and not being frightened to express yourself, which is very much about what theatre is, I think. So, although it's not the architecture I would do, I still think it has a place because it stirs our fascination with the built environment and starts to talk about another way buildings can be placed in the environment. And the materials it's made from, what's more. This is a house that we did at Maddison Architects a while ago, and it's a completely different scale. And why I'm showing you is because it's about the way you think about a building. This is a tiny project. It's a little cabin down at Blairgowrie. We're asked to either renovate, demolish, add, or do something to give more accommodation. So we ended up keeping the old log cabin and adding on to it to give them more amenity. But our approach was to try and make it of its place and not do another log cabin and not do just another modernist building. Perhaps there's something else we can do which talks to the landscape, talks to the old cabin and talks to the environment in general. So we built a building in the driveway. We only took out 2 Moona trees, is that right, Drew? 2 Moonas? Yeah, 2 Moonas came out. So we work with the landscape and the building's reacting to the contours. So the building grows out of a contour and rises up and is kind of bending and fitting in with the landscape. And so as we rotate around the building, we can see the front here, this building rises up out of the landscape and comes up to a bedroom that looks out over the old cabin and clicks onto it, but leaves the old cabin with its integrity. And so we have this form that kind of fits with the landscape, and the architecture is trying to talk to the landscape it's in. And so the construction technique is one where it's all LVL, laminated veneer lumber, put together like a Meccano set, all lightweight sitting on a slab. And we talk about the red little flash running through the landscape like a rosella flying through. So that's us getting a bit poetic. But now there's another building that I was intrigued about, which is Ashton Raggett McDougall. I can't say it. McDougall building. It's a Marion Cultural Centre. Now ARM did the Geelong building we looked at, but they also did this one, and what they did is they just took the word Marion and abstracted it and extended it and cut it away. It's actually, I couldn't believe that they convinced the client that this is a great idea. And it's built, God damn it. And I think it's absolutely intriguing. It spells Marion, it's become a landmark. apparently everyone's very, very happy with it, and it works. You know, it's you know, go back to the Vitruvius mantra. It's fit for purpose. It's strong, and it's got memory associated with it. It's a evocative building.
Where is that?
It's South Australia, I think. Yeah, and there it is being built. Yeah. And this is the last project I want to talk about, which is, second last. This is the Lion House Museum, very much like Charlie and Leah's, which is a building around sharing their art. And this is in Hawthorn. And like Charlie, Corbett Lyon has built this house and made it open to the public. And he's actually got Florence Street embedded in the brickwork. So he's taken a building font, to mark the street. And the building's quite open, both the way it presents the street and internally. So you can walk around much like this house. And more recently, there is a shot inside of their daughter scooting around. But more recently, they've done an addition next door, which is more of a traditional volume building, as a second gallery. Both worth, if you can, going over to, if you haven't seen it, these two buildings worth investigating. And you can see here, again, they've overlaid the name Lion over the facade. So they're still searching for, how do I codify building to tell people that it's contemporary, that it's got perhaps what the content might be inside, make it kind of have memory and connect to the public realm. So they've sort of, Corbett and Yuri, his wife, are looking for ways to express that, I guess. Now I get to my last project. So here we have JAHM, and it's designed by Charlie, but also his daughter Elisa, thank you. And I've been here twice now, and knowing I was going to talk to you tonight, I started thinking, what is this bloody building about? Because it's totally unconventional, and it's a big, when you go upstairs, it's a big receptacle of art and ideas. But they must have started somewhere with the kind of message it's giving to us. I guess the easy one is this work, the outside vertical screen by artist, is it Tony Kraus?
Tony Kraus, yeah.
Tony, and I think, and I might be wrong here, I think it might be harking back to memory around suburbia. Bingo, yeah. So I was looking for the right kind of awning picture to put down. I know that's doing a disservice to the house, but
that's exactly the inspiration for the patterning.
Okay. So there's a kind of a, like the brick, there's something, if you look beyond the surface, what's the actual meaning of this? And I guess it's the opening of your exhibition I came to a few weeks ago, Charlie. When you look at the abstract art you have, it's very easy to walk past it and go, but you start looking at it and trying to, what's it mean to you? And suddenly kind of more answers come along, you study something. And the exhibition opening, there were some of your artists there, and they sidled up next to me and started to talk to me about what the meaning was. And suddenly you go, oh yeah, that's right. And I think architecture is very much like that too. You can read what the architect intended or something else into it. And I think that's really successful about what makes architecture. The other thing I want to just refer to is, in Charlie's house, is this work on the left. And Elan is here. Stick your hand up. He's the lighting designer. So I love the interactive stair that you'll see as you go up. So as you walk up the stair, it reacts with your movement. And I was here twice without actually picking that up. I just thought the lights were moving randomly. And I didn't study it carefully enough. And I guess that's still, I'm going back to the idea that in life we have to be observant and work out things, look deeply into things, and answers come. And I think that's true of the house in some ways, and also of abstract art and also architecture. And the last slide I'm going to leave you with is, what's this house mean? And I kind of, Charlie and Lee have been collecting abstract art for 35 years or?
Close to 50, yeah.
Oh, you shouldn't have said that. I gave you a way out there. So that's a long time to be collecting abstract art. So they got a shitload of it, right? And, you know, it makes me wonder what the idea of the house is this receptacle of modern thinking around. But they're going somewhere, right? You're collecting this, it's got it's kind of a direction, and you're on the move, and maybe it's something like this, you know, maybe it's, you're forging your way up Williams Road, you've got all the good cargo aboard, you know, you're going north, young man, you're going north, and, you know, where she stops no one knows. So that's my thinking about perhaps this is you're on a journey, and you know, you're plying your way and you're collecting as you go. Maybe that's to do with the architecture, I'm not sure. You can kill me later. And so finally, I just thought I'd try and summarise this conundrum about what makes architecture. It's almost impossible. The brick's still upside down, but architects give higher meaning to buildings through the understanding of history, geometric and anthropomorphic principles, form making and the configuration of building fabric that creates resonance and meaning in place and in time. And if anyone has a better answer tonight, I'll be pleased to hear it. So that's me.